Welcome, everybody. This is week 2 of July 2025. I'm Christa of Practical Astros, and I'm here with Shauna of Smart Astro. She has an underscore in there, in between. It really accentuates the smart acidness of her of her perspective of astrology. Thanks, Shauna, for joining for the July forecast. We have just 2 transits that we're going to talk about. But one's a full moon. So it's, big enough. It's literally as big as it can get during a full moon. But the other one we're going to talk about is Saturn turning retrograde on July 12th, just a few days after the full moon. So there are other things happening. We are recording live from the Uranus-Venus conjunction on July 3rd. And so at this whole week, we'll probably still be feeling this Uranus-Venus conjunction and Taurus, and then both of them moving into Gemini. So put in the comments what you've been experiencing with this Uranus transit, because the 2 big ones that we're going to talk about for the week are quote, just the full moon and just the Saturn retrograde, but we're still kind of reeling of the effects of the transits that have already been happening in July. So here's my graphic for the full moon. What are your thoughts just before we look into the chart of just full moon Capricorn archetypally?
Yeah, but I'm thinking about just how heavy everything has felt. I know you've been feeling it. I've been feeling it. The full moon, I'm hoping, is going to shed some light on what this Venus, conjunction is going to bring us.
Yeah.
Saturn retrograde. Saturn spends 6 months a year in retrograde, roughly. So we get to experience that a lot. I don't know. The 2, there's only 2, like you said, but they're heavy enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was cracking me up about, Capricorn is ruled by Saturn. And so this Saturn retrograde, it's stationing still, but it's very, very, very slow during this full moon in Capricorn and Saturn sign. And one of the descriptors of Saturn finds their joy in the 12th house, like very far away. It's that hermitage, that isolation. It's like the full moon in Capricorn is like as isolated an aspect from all of the other transits that are happening that month, really like holding court for the week and being alone and unbothered by all of the others, as far away from the Uranus Gemini situation that's happening. So it just kind of cracked me up that it just seemed very Saturn coded to be like the lonely aspect happening for this week. While we're in the middle of Cancer season, Cancer is the realm of the moon, and we have Jupiter in Cancer, slowly getting out from under the beam, slowly separating from the square to Saturn, or from Saturn, I should say. The full moon is there, just really casting that light. And I think that the heaviness that we feel is that buildup, because often with full moons, you feel it a few days before it gets perfect. You get, it's like that, the growth, the momentum of growth and light is kind of that whole full moon craziness. It's like clockwork. I get text from my friends that work in the medical industry because they're tuned in to specifically the full moon. It's not, all the lunations, but they see it in the people, which the moon is a significator of the people, and all of just the crazy accidents and interpersonal drama that goes on within the hospital. And so this one probably is no exception. I love this old graphic that I found on archive.org of I love the colors specifically for the Capricorn moon. It's very muted. It's very old, very Saturnian, but still kind of gives that dreamy wateriness of Cancer season. I'm just a sucker for vintage images.
Sure. It's also just adds a little mood to it, because you can really see all the different, it's got the sun, it's got the moon, it's got rain, it's got sunshine. Like it also has this like island feel, but then the foresty feel down on that bottom corner. So it's just all of those little secluded kind of places that you want to be.
Yeah, because like the 12th house where Saturn finds their joy, to me, it is kind of those places. It's like the isolated beach, or going in, having a nice lonely forest bathe. or watching a meteor shower at night, or being a part of an eclipse. Like we don't have eclipses for a few more months, but like that kind of isolating singular moment does kind of feel Saturnian. And I was just remembering my dream last night. I dream about the swamps and snakes and alligators often, and I did last night. And alligators remind me of Capricorn. Capricorn is half goat man, half fish man, or whatever. But crocodiles and alligators also feel Capricornian. They're ornery. They're they're like annoyingly patient. They're exploratory eaters, people that have lots of Capricorn placements. It's like they will eat anything, they'll try anything. They're just like voracious. They have that voracious appetite, and it's very crocodilian. They can spend half their time in the water and on land. It's like the crocodile feels like another expression of Capricorn and Saturn, and they're basically just like modern dinosaurs, which so are Capricorns. So say that with all the love. I love the modern dinosaurs of Capricorn. So here's the chart. I moved it to the Aries rising so that we can look at the cardinal placements, because that's kind of really what the full moon is going to hit. But this is the moment of the full moon. The sun will be at 18 degrees, 50 minutes, the moon at 18 degrees, 50 minutes. So what are some of your hot takes on this cold moon?
Well, I can't help but think about Saturn's placement, right? Because this is going to be a full moon in Capricorn. It's Saturn ruled sign. Saturn right now is in fall. Saturn in Aries is uncomfortably warm. It's like that crab needs the cool undercurrent, but is stuck on the beach, like trapped on the sand kind of a thing. And it just gives you that real uncomfortable, like it's cozy and warm until it's just too warm, and you don't know where that flip hit. You don't know where the switch flipped. You don't know, and it just feels like the my Cancer rising, feel, right?
Yeah.
Oh, and I just did the crabby thing too.
feel.
It feels like this moon just is bringing together those opposites, right? The furthest planet, the darkest planet, the one that's most comfortable with that solitude and quiet, like you talked about before, and the planet that's closest to us, that moving body, the moon, that is closest to us. And we watch ebb and flow on this beautiful cycle, and I think we get to experience the polarization of the two within this one setting.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the polarization really is clearest with that Capricorn Cancer axis anyway, because of that lunar Saturn relation. And just the time of year, I mean, whether you're in the northern or southern hemisphere, like that time of year is it is like the threshold of light. And the full moon surrounding that point, that solstice, is very stark. And honestly, that's kind of like for the moon in Capricorn, I appreciate that starkness, because it's still, I mean, people with Capricorn moons don't not feel, but they can compartmentalize. Like I can't even imagine. They're still being authentic within that container, but they give the emotion the container and they set it aside. And as someone that does not have that, that's fascinating to me, that doesn't just spill over. And Aquarius moon probably is similar because it's still Saturn ruled, but there's something about that tension of the Capricorn Cancer axis that I just, it's just like it's a fascinating curiosity. I mean, I feel kind of like an eclectic medicine observer looking at Capricorn moons like very coldly, but it is really kind of fascinating. And just, some of the most steady people seem to have Capricorn moon. And it's like they have the capacity to compartmentalize so that they can be helpful and functional and go forward, which is a very Capricorn thing in the midst of when the sun is in Cancer. But we also have a lot of things going on simultaneously outside of the full moon. One is that Saturn square, that Neptune square to the Capricorn and the Cancer houses. Jupiter is separating. It's 7 degrees. Saturn's at 1. So it's been about a month since the exact square. So he's definitely moving away from it. And the sun is also separating. It's about 11 degrees away. So I think it's July 17th is when it's free from combustion. Hopefully by then we'll see, some of the joy of Jupiter Cancer. I have some opinions about kind of what that could be, but maybe we can save that for next week. But then also what's happening over in the Gemini house is kind of out of sight of this. So, but that still feels like a very big story. And yeah, what are your thoughts about just the Gemini situation? Because that is in relation to the Saturn Neptune. It's in relation to Pluto. Just all those outers kind of like having this point of contact basically around the same time that this full moon is happening. Like, do you feel like the full moon will be a separate story, or do you think that there's going to be some tie-ins?
I think there's definitely going to be some tie-ins. It's difficult to be able to see when we'll see any of that Venus-Uranus conjunction right now. I mean, we can anticipate what might happen, but I don't think any of that's going to pop up until Venus and the sun convene again.
Yeah.
Or Venus gets to this 18 degrees of Cancer, where that full moon point kind of is. But with it being in aversion to both our luminaries, it just feels so behind the scenes.
Yeah.
It just feels very behind the scenes. But it's going to be impactful. It's Uranus. It's Uranus, and it's probably going to feel much. I mean, as heavy as everything feels right now, it's probably going to make a splash. Not to use too many water puns, sorry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm and anxious.
It almost, it's almost like when you have when you sing in a round, like one person starts singing, and then like there's a delay, and the next person starts singing, but they start to weave in together, and then it feels, or like when you look at a tire as it's spinning, it looks like it's like spinning in many different directions or speeds because of the way that the reverberations. It's like the energy just starts to blend in this like surreal way. And I look at the full moon, and then I look at Uranus and Gemini, Venus and Gemini, and sextile to that ruler of that Leo Mercury. And I'm like, they're up to something. And I think that's a good point. Once Venus kind of hits that 18-degree Cancer, maybe we'll have some revelation of kind of what that story is, like what the tea is, because it's Leo Gemini. Like there's a lot of tea. They're making it currently. I think it'll be revealed later. I think that's kind of what I was trying to find out. It's like, I feel like they're related, but maybe we won't see it until a little bit later into the month.
Yeah. I do think, I wonder if it's a twofold also, because if it, maybe we get a first version when Venus hits that 18 Cancer, but I wonder how that cycles as we get to that Capricorn, 18 degrees of Capricorn too. And you wonder how much of it is going to be, I mean, it's Venus, so I'm inclined to go, how much of it is feminine topic, relational topic, that kind of thing. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds.
Yeah. Yeah, because Venus is in the bound and the decan of Jupiter, and Jupiter is in the bound and the decan of Venus. Like I really like that kind of secret, that secret connection there. They're playing by each other's rules, whether they realize it or not. But then we think of just Saturn, slowing down. Like you said, Saturn spends about half the year retrograde anyway. Oftentimes when clients come in, they're worried about having a retrograde planet, and they're often worried about having retrograde Saturn. I'm like, welcome to 50% of us, or 45% of us, Saturn, it's like Saturn is so slow. And that that gives part of its description is like it values that slowness. The tension of it being in that hot-headed Aries sign is like that. The what is it, like 1 foot on the brake, 1 foot on the gas, like just wanting to go, wanting to get quality long-term thing stuff done right now, with as many shortcuts as possible. It's like Aries wants to life hack their way through to be first, and Saturn like just is antithetical to that, which can create like a dynamism that is new. It's also going to be very destructive. And so that Saturn slowing down while this full moon is happening, it's one, the full moon is happening in cardinal signs. Saturn is in a cardinal sign. Libra is the only sign that doesn't have something actively going on in its house, but its ruler, Venus, is coming off with a crazy like double conjunction with Uranus in Taurus and then in Gemini. And Venus can see the Libra house. So Libra is also involved. It just doesn't have maybe an active player in the house that Libra resides in your natal chart. So we have the moon in Capricorn, the sun in Jupiter in Cancer, Saturn, Neptune, Chiron, and Aries. A lot of stuff happening in the cardinal sign. So we were just going to talk about the cardinal axis. If you have cardinal rising, it's going to speak to the topic of life. Do you want to start? And like, what do you see for Aries risings, both with the full moon and then just Saturn's retrograde beginning now? It goes through Thanksgiving. It goes through November 27th. It'll back into Pisces. So it'll be this last kind of foot in the Pisces house before it goes direct. In 2026 re-enters Aries. But what's your thoughts just on both of the transits for Aries risings?
I'm a little perplexed on how to look at this Saturn Neptune, honestly.
I think that's very Saturn Neptune.
Yeah, I feel like it hits, right?
Yeah.
Saturn in Aries just feels frustrated. So, with this being an Aries first house, oh, man, it's I think your gas pedal brake pedal analogy is great for that. But I wonder if there's going to be some kind of a authority check on yourself, or maybe you've got a little bit of burnout. Maybe you're realizing burnout when you didn't see it coming up. It could also be like you're setting new boundaries, that kind of thing, for yourself with regards to other people. I mean, it's going to hit all four of these pivot points, in the chart.
Yeah. And Saturn rules your 10th house too. And so that's kind of what gets my attention of that struggle, of that, what is self-empowerment, what is self-destructive, and how does that relate to specifically my house of career and how I'm seen and how other people see me. It almost feels a little bit of like crippling crisis of self-identity. And that retreat back into Pisces might help give some perspective and healing of isolation. It might not seem like it when it happens, but when you come back out of it, it's like, okay, I'm going to come back into this battle and be in a better position of who I am, and how I can operate. But it feels tied into that career house. So is there some sort of tension between career and home, because that first house, that's square down to the fourth. But you yourself feel like the player, like you are your own worst enemy. You need to get out of your way first. We talk about Ganesha often, and this feels like kind of like the Ganesha lesson is like, Ganesha is a remover of obstacles. Guess what? You're the first one to get out of your own way. So, if Ganesha is helpful, elephants just for Saturn anyway, because they have such a long gestation. They're very traditional, and like their patterns of migration and family, and just their coloring just feels very Saturnian. So maybe the elephant is kind of the animal totem that Aries can use. But flipping it, let's put Libra on the ascendant. So then the Saturn retrograde is going to be having in the 7th. And, you know, Libra is just as a sign, consider the other. I saw this Instagram reel where they were interviewing I think rugby players, like, what's your star sign? What's your star sign? And everyone was answering like, oh, I'm Aries, I'm Aquarius, blah, blah, blah. And this one guy's like, I'm a Libra. And then he immediately said, what's your star sign? He was the only one that like asked back. And I was like, that is so Libra coded. It's like, this is me, but who are you? And to have that Saturn stationing still in your house of relationships, Saturn exalts in Libra. And so it does feel extra tensional. Is that a word? Extra tense, tensional.
It is now.
It is now. Extra tense for Libra to be having its exalted ruler in its house of relationships, because it Saturn can provide lots of restriction and boundaries and blocks and roadblocks and things within relationships. And so is this kind of a reconciliation of unsustainable relationships? Is this really challenging your marriage or challenging your partnerships at work? It feels like kind of that hard work that is kind of essential, but especially because Libras are so tender and sensitive within their own relationships, regardless of, what else is going on. They're Libra suns, like they're not Libra risings, but they're Libra suns. It's just difficult. That I feel like it will be challenging, but just fundamentally fortifying for that Saturn stillness. But it's like, what can you do during a Saturn retrograde? It's one thing is just to learn again, how to hold really loving, compassionate boundaries for yourself and for others, because I feel like others are going to push those boundaries more during that Saturn retrograde. And it's incredibly hard for Libra risings. But this is where the good stuff is. It's just not necessarily that much fun while it happens.
Yeah, it's like the tough love or cold shoulder kind of thing.
Yeah.
You got to find your balance, and remembering that no is a boundary. No is also having love, not just for someone else, but for yourself.
Yeah. I just I read for a woman, and something came out. I was reading tarot. Something came out in the cards, and I hadn't thought of this before. It's like the cards kind of told me, but it was in a way to practice boundaries is to start practicing boundaries, doing the things that you already like to do with a person. And I was like, wow, that's kind of very helpful. It's like, what do you already enjoy doing? What kind of boundary games can you play within that to give yourself the muscle memory to create limitations so that you don't just constantly overflow or burn out? And so whatever that boundary game you can play, maybe not having the last word, maybe just letting that person have the last word, and then giving yourself the personal boundary that you don't have to prove your point again or whatever it is, but just discover a new boundary game, make it fun, to help kind of fortify the relationship. I won't make you do Cancer risings unless you want to. Do you want to do Capricorn risings?
Actually, I wonder how true this will end up being, but I really love to think of those like tangible ways that things are going to show up. And I was thinking this morning, it was a weird shower thought. I wonder how many Cap risings are going to have vacuum problems.
Where did that come from?
After Saturn goes retrograde. Because Saturn is in Aries. Like, is there anything in your home, right? Because that puts Aries in your fourth house. Is there anything more home and earthy than your vacuum?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know why. It's just such a random thought.
It's the keeper of all dust bunnies.
Saturn in Aries and in the house of your home, literally broken vacuum.
That's very interesting.
I don't know.
Yeah. Well, keep us informed.
How many people?
Yeah.
I'm not a Cap rising, so we'll see.
Well, my husband is a Cap rising.
I thought about him too.
Yeah. And he actually has Saturn in Aries in the fourth house. Okay. And, working from home that's just been a lifelong thing. So, yeah, maybe there's a return of like if you do work from home, maybe there's like a return to kind of working in your neighborhood coffee shop when it goes into the third house,
Mm-hmm.
and then you realize that, you're tired of paying, $8 for just iced coffee with,
Mm-hmm.
$3 worth of ice. And you go back to home because you're very practical because you're Capricorn rising. Uh, yeah, I think that the Cap risings, especially because it's your ascendant ruler, having your ascendant ruler be in fall, and having, Capricorn on the first in the first house as like your body and self, it can just be kind of exhaustive to always have to come up with a plan or be your own advocate or uh, be the one that just has to work extra hard. That's what fallen planets have to do. Like if you're an honored guest, like Jupiter's an honored guest right now in Cancer, um, it's, given the keys to the kingdom. It's given everything that people want to bring. It's like bringing the best versions of themselves to Jupiter, only the smiles and only the good news. And it's a little delusional because that's not reality, but it's like this momentary best situation. And I re-listened to a lecture that our teacher Adam talked about, the exaltations, and it was just about essential dignities overall. But he likened the exaltations to a lunar wheel of fortune sort of way. Like the domiciles feel more solar. They're like, the moon always rules Cancer, and the moon, goes through Cancer once a month. It's like a steady, never ceasing thing. But the exaltations, the planets are not exalted that frequently. I mean, Mercury goes through Virgo every year. Venus goes through Pisces every yearish. But Jupiter, it takes 12 years for it to get back to Cancer. And so it feels temporary. It feels lucky. It feels just momentary. And that that lunar luck of having something exalted, it's like just for a little while, you have everybody bringing you their best versions of themselves. But the rest of the time, you got to figure it out. And when you're on the other end of that spectrum, when you're fallen, like when Jupiter's in Capricorn or when Saturn's in Aries, people do not bring their best versions of themselves to you. They kind of bring the worst. It's like you have the unlucky days, you have like the hardest things. It's like, two steps forward, three steps sliding back on your ass off of a mountain. It's just constant. And that is definitely fortifying. You definitely have lots of character built up like barnacles all over your spirit by the time this transits through. And for that to be the ascendant ruler for Capricorn while it's fallen in the fourth, it's like, get ready to dig in your Capricornian heels. Forget that I referenced alligators earlier, because now we're definitely like, you're definitely on that mountain, and you're going to work very, very hard, and it'll show up at home. It'll also show up in that third house, which is kind of like the house of will, like how you identify yourself outside of your home, how you identify yourself within your siblings or your neighborhood, or just your own. It's kind of like a figuring your life out sort of a way, that third house. But I think that Capricorns they're tough, and they're tough because they're Saturnian, and this is like the transit for, all right, well, we're going to be here for a couple of years. This is when you get to show like just how tough you are. And maybe that Neptune will help soften it. I keep thinking that it will, but it's hard to even know, which is again very Neptunian. um, so yeah, on an easy level, vacuums. On a hard level, climbing that spiritual mountaintop for self-worth.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So, but now what about Cancer risings? Because we flip it, and this has Saturn up there in the 10th. For Cancers, this has the lunation in the 7th, and it has the Sun and Jupiter in the 1st. What is it about the 10th house that's putting pressure on the 1st? And is the retrograde going to be helpful to kind of move away from the 1st, and then trine it from the 9th house? As the Cancer rising in the room, do you have any thoughts, anxieties?
Also about anxieties. I mean, we could go worst case scenario, right?
Yeah, we
Saturn
could.
hit
Mm-hmm.
Saturn hit 10th house for a Cancer rising, and the whole, work-life balance shifts, and the whole, do you become exiled from your or in fall in poor standards at your work or something like that, it doesn't have to be that scary, personally, and I'm looking at a new position. It could be definitely something you choose to do. You might be considering a different career path. Like that could be a
Mm-hmm.
very logical thing. Um, my own experience in the moment is still the same type of career. It's just a more solitary position,
Mm-hmm.
where I don't work elbow to elbow with the same people, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it could be any number of things, but it definitely changes how that public life is going to show up for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that retrograde, just moving away from Jupiter, exalted Jupiter in the first, I think that will be the focus, and the Saturn, the obligations of that Saturn will dwindle or fade as it goes retrograde. I like this most for Cancer rising,
Mm-hmm.
just because of that, because then Saturn goes back into the ninth just a little bit, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like a planet in fall kind of shows a story that has ended. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you've kind of hit, pay dirt, rock bottom, that sort of a thing. Like you kind of hit the ground. It's like that's
Yeah.
the end of a story. And
Mm-hmm.
like getting up and starting a new one, you kind of have to get your bearings. And I just
Mm-hmm.
wonder, with Saturn in the 10th, feeling like I feel like I've hit that limit, that ledge, and I'm going to sneak back into the ninth to kind of see, why do I do things,
Mm-hmm.
and that supports the first before I go back into the 10th and be like, I know I have to work really hard. I know that I'm kind of starting over again,
Mm-hmm.
with a new position, or just how I'm viewed, publicly. Is it fame or infamy, sort of a binary. But I think that I think it'll just help the joy of having Jupiter there in the first. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it squares the first, so there's still that, tense aspect, but
Mm-hmm.
tension doesn't always bring misery.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's that good spicy tension. Sometimes it's, a nice debate back and forth between friends, and there's tension's not always bad.
Mm-hmm.
And tension is what creates that like bounce back. If you
Yeah.
think of a yo-yo, you drop that yo-yo, it hits the bottom, it's got to come back up.
Yeah.
But it's because of that suspension and that tension specifically that it does come back up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. It's the momentum that propels the wheel
right.
forward. Yeah.
Mm.
But
I
just
think with
for,
go ahead.
I was just for Cancer rising, the sensitivity of all of that might just be felt because it's
Mm-hmm.
lunar ruling the first, like felt in the
Mm-hmm.
body. That's why anxiety came up, because that tension, while it's necessary, is still a pain in the ass.
It can be,
it,
yeah.
it it can't, just to feel it in the body. But that's why I'm hoping Jupiter coming in and swooping in like a knight in shining armor, rescue me
Mm-hmm.
from the Saturn square.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think for Cancer risings in particular, it's going to be a nice way to realize how much or how important the person is, the self is, the native is to that um, public story as well.
Yeah.
Like if not focusing on yourself, you can't show up in public.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that brings us to the end of the week. Last week we talked about Venus and Uranus and Gemini, while the Neptune retrograde was happening. So we're still feeling it. And then this week it's full moon in Capricorn with the Saturn retrograde. Next week, it'll be Mandi Rae and I talking about the Mercury retrograde, which is my favorite way to say it, and the Sun leaving Cancer and going into their home of Leo. And yeah, thanks so much, Shauna, for joining again. And we'll catch you next time.